guys, welcome to Black Angus Reviews, and I am finally doing a straight ISOM related video. Not a review. I don't know how I'm going to come at an ISOM review because I want to do it in depth. But yeah, I just did, strangely got retweeted by Eric July. We've been having this like discourse or whatever. I hate ISOM, but I love it. I am entertained, and by picking it apart, not for little panel things or when art nitpicks, but just like story-wise and conceptual stuff with the realm of superhero. It's had its value in making me really analyze storytelling and conceptual elements. So like, what is the appeal of superheroes? What is the appeal of this kind of power set or this dichotomy, etc.? What is the importance of a hero getting their proper suit? Like in Spider-Man, for instance, it's a great narrative with the suit being a point of hitting a certain threshold in control of himself and his power and having a focused direction. In this book, for instance, ISOM 1, that is the end of the book, but we've never seen that journey of actually understanding himself and his direction. Thus, the suit is a sign of that, because he's already been a hero who quit, and for whatever reason, this arc has made him want his suit back. I guess just out of practicality, but more or less, it's, I think, trying to say ISOM is back, but I don't think the narrative earns that point as a bookend to that first book. That's just one little example. Yeah, I'm an ISOM, not an Eric July hater. I think he has some valuable commentary, depending on what it is. It's low-hanging, easy fruit for the conservative spectrum of YouTube commentary. Like, oh, look, Velma's woke. Like, well, no shit. Can that easy introductory point lead to further discussion? Because, we're in a day and age where you say that, you get pigeonholed about every other media. It could open to extensive commentary and enlighten someone about why they hate woke stuff in media, how it devalues storytelling. So it's not that it's useless or anything, but, depending on what the context, this is low-hanging fruit commentary. So yeah, I'm a sub to Eric July. And I support anyone going over to ripaverse.com and buying ISOM, getting ready for future campaigns. So hopefully Ripper Goalpost won't try to pigeonhole me as a Eric hater and wishing for his demise financially. I have read both these books. I want them to be better. That is my frustration, is that I feel these are really bad books that people are shilling overall and pretending they're fans of because they like the guy it's attached to. And that would be fine, but no one will admit that. And you've seen it in his more or less equal peers on the YouTube spectrum. That Yellow Flash stream is a great example, I think. We'll get into that later, but he's like, oh, there's a poster, he flies. And it's like, there's an explicit point in the story. If you read it, he says, I don't fly. And that's a problem because Yair throws into a fucking car. But we're going to be looking at a series of tweet exchange started by him seeing something in regards to me. Probably his name's probably tagged in the thread, but that was not my intent. I'm not afraid to engage. Clearly, I've been going for a couple hours now, but it's just come to a standstill. I think this is really revealing about conceptual problems with Eric as a writer. It feels some different streams I've watched of him regarding this book, that he thinks there's really nowhere to go up as far as his writing skill or something. And that's very frustrating because as pompous and egotistical as EVS can be and sell himself to the crowd, I see a real hesitancy because he's really putting himself out there with his work. I think Cyberfrog 2 is a real drop-off from Cyberfrog 1, but that's a narrative thing too. I think Chelsin is much more interesting perspective than Cyberfrog, having seen both books. I think that's really the dichotomy for me, and what's a lack of investment now in the franchise, in the ongoing story. But let's look at these tweets, and I don't know. I just want you all to add your own commentary. If you're ISOM hater, Eric hater, if you're Eric lover, and you're just gonna say ha fat or whatever. I don't know. I'm a vet. I've done stuff, and I've fallen short weight wise and all that. I'm lost pant size though. I'm doing better. So coming here just be like, huh, fat, who cares? Like whatever, dude. Actually engage the conversation. um so I said in this thing about someone I follow shared this tweet, so I saw this response and I replied about how it's like all these Eric haters, they hate ISOM. It's more than just the comic. And for me, it's like, well, no. I say if those trash books said Marvel on the cover, you'd ridicule every panel. I wouldn't have such a problem with this fandom if most of it actually read the book and admitted, yeah, it's crap, but we love Eric. Quote unquote, parentheses, not comics. All right. So Eric sees this and retweets, why does it hurt you so much to see that people genuinely like our product? Read this back to yourself. Haha. You're basically saying there's only one conclusion, which happens to align with your own individual opinion. See, this kind of takes you retarded because this is what your whole channel's built on is here's an assessment and this is the right view. Look, it lost money because they don't think like me, which would get the money. For instance, with woke, like everyone has this belief, if they're invested, they have like a set belief in something and like, well, this is wrong, this is bad, whatever the case. Some things are open and just like, well, I don't like it, but it's fine. Other things is like, how can anyone like this is bad, it's bad storytelling. That's the dichotomy of The Last Jedi is, at least people argue, use examples to contextualize their perspective. So there is like wiggle room, but there ultimately comes down to yes, no, accepting or rejecting a product, given its full context. To think people would ridicule if it was put out by another company shows that you've never actually listened. You only assumed, which is like, I don't know what that means. I've read both books. It's talking about 200 pages of a character. I said your peers have pushed this book largely for a multimedia agenda or in the hopes of success for themselves down the road, and also not read it. Yellow Flash saying ISOM can fly. Haha. I've seen countless comments from YouTube and here in your thread saying, I don't read comics and I bought ISOM, which you probably interpret as growing general comic readership. I interpret that as an uninterested, uninvolved buyer who probably did so to stick it to Marvel or wokeness in general. The idea that this could open new readers that have never involved themselves in comics, I don't see. That is an argument. That is a potential, but I don't see it with the fervor around this book. I don't see people like, man, I love this point. I can't wait to see where this transpires. The story has gone from a Luke Cage, Daredevil level story, learning this character, to intergalactic, interdimensional in 2 books. And I still don't know the character, don't know his actual resolve. I know now he kind of quit for a while because a girl died in front of him they couldn't save, bothered him. And it's like, more or less, that's an understandable trope with the right context. But eventually, like, the hero pushes through that the fact of collateral damage can or will happen. I don't know. But then I say maybe they'll actually turn into evolved readers, but I think CG is a great example of, by and large, no. I'm comics. I've been here since Cyberfrog and Jawbreakers. And more or less, I don't see like this is like a growing thing. EVS is growing in value, but he's also getting more merchandise. There's a speculation market. There's all these factors with his growth. On top of, I think people are seeing like, all right, there's an escalation. I'm enjoying it. And so more people are like buying in to like an ongoing story. There's a lot of factors. He says, what does any of this have to do with you being upset? People actually are into the universe. You can't say people aren't interested. We did it twice. We'll be doing it a 3rd and 4th time here soon. All right. People buying a thing because they like you is not the same as they're interested and invested in the story. It could be the case individual wise, but overall, I don't see that in the commentary about this book. This is like my whole perspective. And I said, yes, they bought and will buy your YouTube merch. Captain Marvel made $1 billion. It's taken 5 years for Marvel to start tanking. People, by and large, are idiotic spenders. But aside from lack of flight, which I said repeatedly was a well-timed Looney Tunes joke by you. For those of you who haven't read ISOM, he goes to confront Derek. It becomes physical because of ISOM. Maybe that's him being hot-headed, or maybe this is just Eric thinks this is a straight, like, makes total sense. I don't know. That's, again, the kind of confusing thing about the story is what is his worldview? What is his outlook? I don't really know. By ISOM too, he wants to do good, but that seems like a in flux what that means exactly so far, to say the least, given this whole fight with Darren's men in the club. He then gets to get his ass kicked by another Except. Except is what these superheroes are defined as, like mutants. Gets thrown out and then immediately hits Yaira, like physically has his body hit her, not punches her. And she's already in conflict with Alpha Core, so she's like, "You're with them," and he's like, "What?" And so she picks his ass up, and then, not knowing if he's just a regular guy or not, throws him into a car on the ground. And there's a mental narration where he's like, "There's many things I've done to train myself. I can do a lot, but one thing I can't do is fly," and then crash. And it's like that. That's a funny joke. I don't know. Seeing Eric and commentary or refutation of commentary about his book, I don't know if he actually wrote that as a joke or if he's just being like deadpan straight. But for me, it reads as a good little comic joke. Let me see. But yeah, aside from the lack of flight, I have no idea what the risk to the character is. He needs a suit for impact, but he survives impact in a wall crash, but then runs from cops. Is it because he's actually at risk, doesn't want to hurt innocent cops, or are the cops and their weapons lethal to ISOM? He survived being thrown by not Captain Marvel, it's Yaira, into a car with just a concussion. I guess it's not really clear why he's in. It just gets his bell rung. I guess he's in the hospital, but then he escapes. But runs from the cops. If your best performing videos are about comics, I can't give you the first time writer excuse for these story problems like everyone else, because that's built into the expectation of your creativity, your apparent comic knowledge. And then he goes and says, it's what's frustrating, this whole dialogue with Eric, is that I'm giving like in-depth explanation as to the whole root of this argument is, why do I think it's trash? Why do I think people aren't actually interested fans in this series? And for one thing, a big factor of this whole story is there's not a definition of power and weakness in ISOM, aside from flight. It's like, well, he gets thrown into a wall, but then he throws someone else in the wall, and that knocks him out, but not ISOM. It seems that he can just like crush people's ribs by a punch. He can't fly. He needs a suit for impact, but he's already survived impact with just minimal damage, getting a concussion maybe. And also there's no headgear to the suit. So what is the impact suit doing exactly? I don't know. It doesn't seem like it's a Black Panther thing where I am absorbing kinetic energy and can dissipate it at will afterward. This is what I'm talking about. There's so many references you can make of like, well, this is like that. This is like a way to make sense of things, comparative analysis. And you do so, or you just mention in depth that showing that you've read this, you've seen the context, and it's like, this is a problem. If Marvel did this, it would be ridiculed, but you're doing it and no one makes a deal out of it because they're really rooting for you or what they think your success will do to mainstream entertainment. But they won't admit that. They act like they're fans of it, and it's like, it just doesn't match up with me at all, given the whole history of this niche of YouTube commentary that I've been involved in, of ridiculing mainstream for covering for industries, Disney, whatever, shielding them with diversity hires or ridiculing fans that don't like it and using diversity as a shield, whether it be women, minorities, gender, sexuality, on top of just bad story writing. And it's just, I don't see it. I expected it, I guess, that we collectively have this commentary for years about media, that we would be even killed, but it seems like we're really no different collectively. This is a conservative side versus mainstream is generally leftist. All right. You can say you're ANCAP and don't vote, whatever, but you fall under conservatism, Eric. You can think you don't, but this is like everyone's in agreement with your perspective by and large, because they are conservatives watching your channel and saying, yeah, he's saying what I like, I agree, sub, because they're conservative. It's all boils down to a dichotomy. You're either a leftist or you're against them. So by de facto, you are conservative and thus a Nazi to these people. But he's, yeah, it's frustrating because like, I'll give this in-depth stuff like I just ranted about right now, and then he'll say these things that are just deflections and not addressing the whole point. of this discussion, I think. He says, now you're just venting. Stop moving the post. Why does it pain you so much that people genuinely enjoy this universe? And I'm frustrated. Say, holy fuck, dude, you're retarded. This is why your book has so many problems at a conceptual level in its storytelling, like what I just mentioned above. What are the risks to ISOM? What are his powers? You'll see in the story, I've asked this like 4 times, and he keeps asking, like, maybe you just don't comprehend things. And it's like, well, what am I not comprehending? He gets burned by, I say, he gets burned by a monkey demon, but then he's sworn by them, and he's apparently unfazed at the endless hordes. He's just incessantly punching for like 4 pages at one point. It's a narrative headache, but I can't say I'm not entertained by how bad it is. And that's like an honest thing. I've never liked stuff because they're bad. I've never been like, it's so bad, it's good. Legitimately, I do enjoy this bad storytelling. But I want it to be better. I would like this to. I would love to see ISOM be a legitimate product that Marvel and DC can't ignore. They have to address. They have to comment on it, and they have to compete. I want DC to do good, not because I really care about that company. Besides Batman, I want them to do good because it keeps Marvel straight. They can't do weak, limp-wristed shit like Eternals or Ant-Man 3. And so on, where it seems it's going. America Chavez, that concept of a multiverse phasing person, like that could be a cool story, but it's just so we're in a bad state of entertainment overall. I want entertainment to be good even for the things that I'm not invested in. I want things good. I want to see things that I've never been a Power Rangers guy, but they made like a really good Power Rangers. Let me check that out. Everyone's saying it's so well written, blah blah blah. You might make a new fan out of me. I might retroactively dig into the old merchandise and help be part of a reinvigoration. So, it's just like, I like media. I like seeing good stuff. I don't like bad stuff. I typically ignore it, but this is such like a big talking point in my sphere of conversation. I have to address it. I have to look into it. And unfortunately, it's 200 pages so far of bad stuff. And again, if he had an actual story writer humility like EVS seems to, where regardless of what ego he's selling, owning the libs and stuff, at the end of the day, he's like, God, I hope you like this. I've really worked hard on this. I'm putting myself out there. An idea that like, man, I really hate it if you don't like it because I've worked so hard on it. Not just art, but storytelling. At the end of the day, I'll read bad art for a good story. This whole sphere, CG and something like ISOM, all the tangents, it's got me invested to a degree in comics. It's opened my eyes to this medium, and it's all mostly new to me, even though it might be 80 years old. But anyway, I say, I know you're used to SJW pronoun people netting you. I'm not that. I actually want this to do well on story merit, not because you're a conservative media personality, and you are. It's definitely not going to. It won't permeate past this conservative niche and have any chance at mainstream success if it doesn't improve. And so this is where he keeps like circling the conversation annoyingly. He says, do you accept a world where what you consider to be a problem is either due to a comprehension issue or opinion? And it's like, I don't know, at some point, yeah, I guess you have to concede something like Tenet. Tenet's a very heady film. You got to rewatch if you really want to like absorb what it's trying to say, and like idea offers about time travel storytelling. It's a very dense story, just in that concept alone, on top of the actual events. So you either just can see like it's too smart, or it might be so stupid it thinks it's smart. You can just check out, or I don't know. But I say, talk about goalposts. You can't even answer at a basic level ISOM's powers or weaknesses. And he says, until you prove your good faith, we already see that you have comprehension issues. So I'm trying to see if you have the humility to admit it. This guy didn't talk about humility. You can't even get my political affiliation correct. And it's like generalizations. You're just gonna have to accept most of the world talks generalizations, Eric. You're ANCAP, whatever. This is all kind of libertarian. It all boils down to conservative talking points. Your commentary is conservative talking points. There is a huge overlap. This is why you're on the Blaze with Glenn Beck. It's why you've been able to go on Fox to sell your book. There is a huge overlap. Thus, by and large, you're conservative. I said, dude, you sold your book on the Blazing Fox. Tap dance all you want with your ANCAP position. Nearly all your commentary is right-sided and has garnered a largely conservative audience. And he says, Blaze nor Fox are selling our books. You can only get it from our store. Dude, see, I think this guy does not have like real reading comprehension, where it's like if you don't specifically state exactly. This is what SGWs always try to do. They always try to like dictate sometimes arbitrary defining, or they can't accept just like common dialogue usage and word usage, uh, where it's like, well, I mean, sure, you could actually define what grade of evil is Boba Fett in Star Wars. Like, well, he's a bounty hunter, so that's kind of just naturally negative. He's not a Force user, but he falls under bad guys. Simply put, even though it's just a job in the galaxy, it's not really light or dark, but it's kind of just negative. It's killing people for money, so it's like one step bad versus Vader is 10. You know, like, do we have to? How can you have a conversation? You have to define every little thing. This isn't a philosophy class. We're talking about if your comic book's good or not, and why I think it's not. I'll ask one time. Do you accept that you could quite possibly be incorrect, or your assessment or people disagree with your conclusion? And I'm like, I've stated several in-depth conclusions and asked for more definition, and you keep deflecting. IDK, how do you determine good faith or not? I have an in-depth criticism from reading 200 pages of your stuff. You ask, why does it pain you people like this universe? I state various problems with both books as to why, and I don't think people would let that slide if it simply said Marvel over Rippaverse. Answer the actual questions, or let's move on. And he says, you actually haven't answered the core question at all. I'll ask again. Before we continue, do you accept that there could possibly be a comprehension issue on your behalf, or that people will come to a different conclusion about its merits? I say, that was a question you offered after not answering the pertinent question of what are ISOM's powers, risks, and or weaknesses. But sure, I'll answer another question. Yes, people can have different conclusions on media. Currently, IDK have Star Wars series eating up Ahsoka, given his lore expertise. And he says, if you can concede there's a possibility that you could possibly have a comprehension issue, I'll point you to help. If not, that's a waste of my time, because you simply won't accept any other position. And I'm just like, well, what am I missing? This is the whole point. It's like, I've stated things I've seen in your book, and then you're saying I'm missing it. And I'm like, ultimately, this whole thing is like, what am I missing? Because I think this is bad. You could essentially give a commentary. Sometimes things go over people's head. I don't think that's the case with this book. I think it's pretty clear and obvious. But I'm open to you enlightening me as the creator himself of ISOM 1 and 2. What am I missing in what I've just stated? Did none of the things I said about the monkey demon, the impact, he can't fly, he hits walls, but then he runs from cops? Did I miss anything? Did those things happen? If we can agree on that, then my question stands of, this doesn't make sense. There's no clarity to the risk to your character. Thus, this hurts the overall story because it feels arbitrary now. This is the problem in Ahsoka, actually, is what is the risk of a lightsaber now? You've shown that someone can get directly stabbed, which before we've seen people get killed by that. Yoda's done it to clone troopers. Qui-Gon Jinn died by Darth Maul's hand with a lightsaber. Obi-Wan got his head cut off. Obi-Wan was debilitated by just getting tapped twice by a lightsaber on his limbs. Anakin's had his limbs cut off, and that's part of why he wears this robotic suit. So there's a multitude of things with that franchise, and now lightsabers mean nothing unless the narrator, the story writer, wants it to. Girl can survive a direct stab wound, but then a apparently Nazgul Sith guy might be dead, having been slashed, or he might still be alive because he's a vapor dust man. I don't know. And this is one of the many problems with that show, is there's no definition to a power source in a long-standing saga. So I ask, what is the comprehension issue? You wrote a bad book that's been successful financially. Films have won Oscars that critics retroactively say didn't deserve it. This whole time, you still can't define ISOM's basic power set or limits, directly tied to my frustration with how people can like this universe. 200 pages, and it's still drastically unclear. So then I give a little counterexample of, vague storytelling that gets definition over time. I say the first 4 issues of Spawn, roughly the same length of ISOM 1, walks us through the mystery of Al Simmons and his powers. Still not capped at that point, meaning we don't know what the actual end level is of Spawn. All right. Yet there's still has a conclusion as to who he is and what are his chief motivations and the dilemma of his powers that will exhaust eventually. Not to mention introducing Sam and Twitch as a human window into a supernatural world. They're essentially like C-3PO and R2. They're like a bickering odd couple that more or less is a kind of at times comedic angle that we the audience can kind of decompress a little bit, still be aware of things going on, but from an outside perspective from the hero and villain and the related parties. Eric says, do you accept that you could be around about this having comprehension issues? And I said, what am I miscomprehending? And he simply says, perhaps one, the rules of a comic book. Two, what was displayed in the first two books regarding ISOM's powers. And I'm like, right. See, this is the thing. This is a bad writer. This is like Rian Johnson level shit. It's actually worse on it. At least Rian Johnson has like a depth of knowledge of the lore to argue why he would make this angle or that angle. The hubris of the Jedi. He summarizes the prequels is the fall of the Jedi by their own vanity, believing they controlled the light of the Force. That was their undoing with Darth Vader. And this informs Luke, it's all really folly involving himself in the grand five of good and evil. That's his state at that point of the story. He ends up, because of Abrams recanting that, but disagree from the start. But it's like, okay. I understand a character could think that or get to that conclusion. This what was displayed in the two book. This is what happened on that Yellow Flash stream. Is Dick Mash is like, what are his powers? And he's like, did you not see him hit a wall? And it's like, right. Then he ran from the cops. So I have no idea. Is he like Luke Cage or is he like Jacob Blake from Kenosha and will need a wheelchair if a cop shoots him? This is a foundational problem. Miles Morales in the original 3 volumes Bendis did. Central about value Miles Morales in that book, but simultaneously you have a set spider person where we understand the concept, nothing's really amiss, but then also he has a couple powers like electric shock and invisibility that he can't control, at least for a time. So this is it's not revealed at the start. This is a progression. And it's a little bit of a mystery, and then he kind of gains control of his power set. So it's like you can have Spawn is like always changing, and you're seeing new limits. He's a supernatural character. He's a demon. He's a hellspawn. So it's not a stretch to have him do like ridiculous god shit. He's defeated Satan and God in spiritual conflict. So this is the problem, man. You need to define this stuff, and I don't think he is. And it seems like, again, he gets burned by a monkey demon. All right. But then he's fighting swarms of them, and it seems to be no problem. It's just endless, maybe. It's maybe folly to think you can ever actually take these demon monkeys out. But it's just a horde. And they're all attacking, but it seems like the fire powers mean nothing now. And yet people are like, this is great. Look out, Marvel. No. I just wish there was honesty in this sphere about how good this series is so far. Can it improve? It definitely can. But yeah, hopefully any of you ISOM enjoyers, maybe you see a legitimate perspective of criticism from me, because I've read these books. I know the main points pretty well. I've reread it. When EVS was on that stream before Dick and Vito came on, and he's like, dude, I read it twice. Like, that is not a line you say when it's like, oh, yeah, it's great. It's like, no, I read it twice because I had to make sure I didn't miss something to get to a conclusion. And I respect EVS, so like that is a kind of meme about this book, about its shortcomings. Just just address and be like, hey, you know what? Yeah, I'm not a great writer when I wrote ISOM 1. I have a lot of big conceptual ideas when I do this world, but I didn't really fine tune my character's story. I didn't define his perspective in the world, especially being a retired, a Ronin kind of character, someone that's like forsaken the path he was on before and gone solo and kind of introspective. He's about himself now, but now his sister kind of ropes him into something that rekindles the superhero. It could work. It's very confused, and I think he can't handle the criticism. I legitimately think that from this interaction, from seeing others, I don't know how you come away from what I'm asking and think you just don't comprehend. It's like, wait. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. What am I missing? I don't think I missed anything reading the books and thus commenting on it, but whatever. Sub if you want, I appreciate it. At the end of the day, I just want dialogue with people, and I just feel like I'm talking to a brick wall at this point now with Eric, where it's like, this isn't going to get any better. Bring in whoever you want. You're writing Eric's story. It's not good, but it's entertaining. It's frustratingly entertaining. It's like, wow, this is bad, but it's fun. Talk to you later.